could take their seats, please. The board would like to call to order the regular CUSD 201 Board of Education meeting today, April 24th, 2018. And roll call, please.
Mr. Armstrong.
Here.
Mrs. Charlton.
Here.
Mrs. Coyle.
Here.
Mr. Price.
Here.
Mr. Rudy.
Here.
Mr. Strohmeyer.
Here.
Ms. Wilson.
Here.
Thank you.
If we could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, the first item on the agenda is approval of minutes. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the April 10th, 2018 regular meeting of the Board of Education as presented.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carried. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the closed session of the April 10th, 2018 regular meeting of the Board of Education as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the April 16, 2018 special meeting of the Board of Education as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Okay, motion carried. Public comment. Are there any public comments? Okay, first item on the agenda is appointment of board committees. Glad that everybody is here tonight. Do you want to read this or should I?
You can.
Okay. So there's, for many years, the Board of Education has maintained committees to work with the administration, examining certain key elements in the CUSD 201 operation. The committees have been finance, policy, buildings and grounds. In recent years, a climate committee was also added at the board's request. As designed, the committees have been actively involved in several important areas. The administration has appreciated this type of board involvement. So it has been the custom of the new Board of Education to rearrange committee structures at this time. So we have these 5 committees here, and so we'd like to at least have 1 or 2 board members on each committee. So I guess we can do this if you want to, if there's a committee you want to sit on, let me know and we can jot that down and everybody will get an opportunity to participate in something.
I guess the Climate Committee has kind of been part of the joint committee over the past couple of years. There hasn't really been a separate board Climate Committee.
But I think that's, the board asked that to be added. And I think, I think you've been the representative, Joel, but primarily it's been meeting with
the
joint committee.
at the joint committee. So, I mean, I'm happy to stay on that, and then the policy committee is fine with me.
Okay, thank you, Joel.
Maria, I've always said on the finance and the buildings and grounds, so finance and facility would be fine.
So finance and facilities, okay?
Yep.
And I'll stay on the facility as well.
Yes, I am interested in policy and public relations.
Thank you, Laura.
I would be interested in facility and public relations.
I'm happy to do finance.
And I'd like to do facilities.
Can we have 4
Is there too many
four
on?
board members? We usually have 2.
Policies. Is there one available for policies?
We need climate.
We need climate.
For what?
We need climate.
Those are hard for me to get to in the evening. How about public relations?
Okay, well then that's 3. We can do
Yeah, we can do that. We
3,
just
and then
post,
we have to
yeah.
make sure, because if we have more than 2, we have to post it, so. Okay, well, is public relations okay then? Okay. Okay, we will type this all up and then give it to everybody. I'll give you this and then,
Judy, public relations and facilities, or just public relations?
Just public relations.
just
is
public
fine.
relations and stuff. Okay. Thank you. Oh, do we have to do IASB or,
That's later on.
oh, that's later on. Okay. Here, I'll give you that. Okay, thank you, everybody. Then the next thing is, has everyone had a chance to look at the schedule, board meetings, dates, times, and places? Did you update that thing?
Yes, it was updated for the July 17th.
So, again, what we have in front of us is the regularly scheduled board meetings. And if you will see, the only change that we had to put is July 17th. There was a conflict with this room, so we will have a regular Board of Education meeting at South School District Office conference room, but it will be the same type meeting. We'll tape it and everything else. So as you can see, most of the time, in the summers, there's one meeting a month, and then over the holidays. Again, we're sticking with the second, when there's two meetings, the second and the fourth Tuesday of the month. When there's one, it's generally the third one. Okay, any questions or? Okay. The chair will entertain a motion that the regular meetings of the Community Unit School District 201 Board of Education be held as identified on notice schedule of regular meetings of the Board of Education of Community Unit School District 201 as presented.
So moved.
Second?
And roll call, please.
Mr. Price?
Yes.
Mr. Rudy?
Yes.
Mr. Stromeyer?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Armstrong?
Yes.
Mrs. Coyle?
Yes.
Mrs. Charlton?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. And then we'll post these on
On the website.
regular, on their website. Okay. Then the appointment of IASB rep. In the past, Gary Armstrong has been the board rep at the IASB conference, at the tri-conference.
I'm happy to continue the role unless somebody else really wants to do it, and I'm open to change, but
No one wants to fight for it?
that's fine.
Okay. The chair will entertain a motion to appoint Gary Armstrong as District 201's Illinois Association of School Boards Delegate Representative.
So moved?
Second.
And roll call, please.
Mr. Rudy?
Yes.
Mr. Stromeyer?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Armstrong?
Yes.
Mrs. Coyle?
Yes.
Mr. Price?
Yes.
Mrs. Charlton?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Gary, for that. Okay, the next item is the consent agenda. Are there any comments or questions? The chair will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented. Number 1, personnel recommendations. 2, approval of April 2018 expenditure report. And 3, ratification of March 2018 regular payroll.
So moved?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Stromeyer?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Armstrong?
Yes.
Mrs. Coyle?
Yes.
Mr. Price?
Yes.
Mr. Rudy?
Yes.
Mrs. Charlton?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, the first item for information or discussion is the library program presentation.
Good evening, Board of Education, Mr. Carey. I want to present my colleagues, the library media specialists from all of our schools. Mrs. Karen Johnson from Manning, Mrs. Rebecca Johnston from Miller, Ms. Sheila Rue from Westmont Junior High, and Ms. Michelle Therese from the high school.
Thank you, Nadine, for your introduction and for all of your support. We're excited to be here tonight, although we're missing our images to show you. But we're excited to be here to show you how our school libraries take the lead within our buildings. Libraries lead also happens to be the theme of the American Library Association for April, which is School Library Month. As you peruse the PDF in your documents with images from our district libraries, we hope that you'll see many of the wonderful ways in which we're taking the lead in the teaching and the learning of the students in District 201. How do we lead in our libraries? In many ways. We facilitate collaboration with teachers and students. We support our school and district goals, and we design learning environments that support community building and 21st century learning. At Manning, the library leads by example to collaborate in student learning. Every week, students have the opportunity to select new books to read, enjoy, and foster their love of literacy. Manning Library takes the lead to invite community partners to come to collaborate in instruction. Materials and collaborative units extend the classroom and its instruction with interactive activities. The library provides opportunities to create and explore with makerspace tools, and students complete research and technology projects that offer opportunities for students to develop STEM skills, such as coding. Students, teachers, and community resources all come together at Manning Library to lead with a central environment of laughter, literacy, and learning.
At Miller, the library leads in supporting teaching and learning. Having been accepted as a field museum ambassador this year, I have collaborated with teachers and students to strengthen and enhance lessons using resources from the museum. Similar to Manning, students visit the library for book checkout and work on classroom projects integrated with technology. Within the Media Center space, we have had the opportunity to strengthen group team building projects, such as using problem-solving skills to solve Rubik's Cube mosaics, and students have completed several breakout EDU puzzles, both digitally and with the lockbox. Students use a variety of devices, such as Chromebooks, iPads, and desktops, to enhance projects, explore the various programs and applications, and support their curiosity for learning.
At Westmont Junior High, we are leading with innovative learning experience such as troubleshooting and repairing Chromebooks in Smart Service. Students and teachers shared their love of literacy with Chris Rylander during our author visit on Standard Day at the beginning of the year. We continue to share our love of reading by purchasing and displaying new books throughout the library. We challenge students with programming activities such as Scratch with Makey Makeys, as well as Lego Mindstorm Robotics. We are moving forward with transforming the Media Center into collaborative learning spaces with the Innovation Lab, the Sprouting Seeds Junior Cafe, and even more changes that will be coming soon.
Students and teachers at Westmont High School view their library as the hub of the school, a home away from home, where they can always count on a safe, focused place to work and where they receive the academic support they need to be successful in their studies. Throughout the day, the high school library is filled with students working on research, organizing projects, and looking for new books to read. Because of the high school, our school-wide reading initiative, which the library supports through Reader's Advisory, book talks, and student participation in collection development, books in print, I'm happy to say, are still in high demand. The high school library also supports students and teachers in the classroom, offering tech support, online print resources, and lessons in building research skills and technology skills. This year, the library has taken on a new look. We've replaced our 30 desktop computers with a smaller bank of PCs and Macs to support more technology, and added flexible seating to accommodate group work, presentations, and roundtable discussions. Next year, the Media Center will open up a writing center for students who need help with writing and research, and students may also become tutors and help other students become better writers. Thank you.
Thank you. Your presentation here that you weren't able to put up, with your permission, can I read 2 of your quotes that you have in here? Of course. One is, "What a school thinks about its library is the measure of what it feels about education," by Harold Howe. So I would think that's fantastic, and I would like to thank all of you. And then the last one, I like this one too. Google can bring you back 100,000 answers. A librarian can bring you back the right one, in the opinion. So, thank you very much. Thank you. Did anybody have any comments or questions? But thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, the next item for discussion is the curriculum update.
Mr. Carey and the Board of Education. My colleague Britta Wozak and myself are going to be available for questions. What we provided for you in your board packet is kind of an overview of the decision-making process to purchase a new Common Core aligned resource. Today's position is to present to the information to you and answer any questions. And then next time we meet, we'll ask you for approval for the purchase. So the process to select this particular Common Core resource was throughout these past, I think, 2 or 3 months, we asked the teachers to evaluate the resource and take a look at the lesson planning. And with Britta's support, they pulled lessons that fit into their scope and sequence and were able to try out specific lessons and materials and use the assessments. And then we met as a committee several times, and throughout that process we determined that this would be the most suitable resource that would be aligned to the Common Core, that we could do our vertical articulation, and that we fit into the vision and of the way we want to teach math for our students. So if you have any questions. Okay.
I have just a quick question. You had said it was interesting to read about how you were working on this. And so what did the students that you worked with think about changing? Like, what did they think about changing it, and what you're thinking about doing?
I think that the students were mostly, really willing to work with their teachers and trying new things, and a lot of teachers were really flexible, and I think their students have been really flexible too, and just having an open mind. They're still using a lot of similar materials that they used in the past, but they were trying to integrate some of these new resources to try something new. The content hasn't changed, so the topic of what they're learning hasn't changed. They're just utilizing some different materials to do that.
What was the concern with everyday mathematics?
The concern with everyday math was that the rigor of the standards and the alignment of the standards was not not aligned in terms of the major standards and the minor standards. So the way the old program presented the scope and sequence was, for example, we'd spend a great deal of time on a standard that would be sort of a minor standard, and therefore we wouldn't have time to prepare our students with standards that would be leveraged in the next grade level, or standards that were important throughout the grade level. So we had a lot of gaps. We felt like the test scores and the assessment scores weren't reflective of what we could do with a kind of a better aligned material. In addition to that, our teachers throughout the grade levels were called upon to supplement a lot and almost kind of substitute based on the lack of alignment to the Common Core, and also the mathematical practices was not the focus of the everyday math program. The tricky part about everyday math is it's been around for a really long time, and when they came out with the 2015 edition, the claim was that it was aligned to the Common Core. The difference between everyday math and the 3 programs that we evaluated in this process was the 3 programs that we looked at were published since the onset of Common Core. Ready Math has got a 2018 copyright, so wasn't like sort of retrofitted to the new standards. So there was a lot at play, and we felt that in the best interest of our students, we would start to look at new programs. So Britta facilitated the committee to look at 3 separate resources, and the teachers decided which ones, that the lessons that they would try, kind of narrowed it down, and then narrowed it down to the final selection. So we're looking forward to working with a program that we can vertically articulate all the way K-5, and that those standards are aligned based on those that are leveraged, that they have longevity, and that are going to prepare our kids for the next level.
I was also curious, I don't know how to phrase this probably. So, did we think that there was a problem during PLC meeting times? I mean, is this how this really came about? Were teachers actually talking about it during the PLCs, and then we all said, or you guys said, well, maybe we should do something different? I mean, is that how it all formed, or did we just discover it in some other way? I'm just asking.
I think one of the biggest eye-opening pieces for us was taking a look at our scope and sequence K-5. We have a scope and sequence for every single grade, but it seemed like those scope and sequences were a little bit disjointed, and so we wanted to make sure that they flowed even nicely for, through the grade levels, and that we didn't have some of those gaps. We also noticed that through everyday math, teachers were focusing on some standards a little bit more than other standards that they should have been having that focus on. So there's what you call anchor standards or major standards that we really needed to make sure that we were hitting those standards as like you're walking out the door of that grade level standard. Whereas some of those additional or supporting standard, we want our kids to have access to see those standards and try them, but those are not the standards that we need our kids exiting that grade level with, and we were focusing too much on some of those in a couple of the grade levels.
And referencing back to the impact of the PLCs and how that had a bearing on the decision-making process, and this is also true. I've also provided for you sort of some background information about the ELA standards. The four major questions for PLCs begin with what will we teach our students? So when we find that the time we spend in PLCs to be too heavily focused on finding materials, aligning materials to the standards, supplementing what we have based on our core resource, that's a kind of a red flag in terms of whether or not we have the right resources in place. So yes, the time that we spent in PLC does have a tremendous amount of impact on our decision making. And when we started to look at the math resource and look at how thoroughly that this program met the needs of our kids and how comprehensive the program is, not to say that this kind of alleviates the necessity for our teachers to really know those standards, but when we looked at that, we realized that there was also a gap with our resources with ELA. When you look at the amount of alignment in terms of the assessments and the practice and the way that the teachers can differentiate with what's already built in, the digital access for lessons when you need extra support, or the digital access for lessons for kids that already understand that program, teachers really got excited about what was available through Ready Math and said, we have the same challenges in ELA. So we're not far enough along for us to be able to present a resource for you in ELA, but we're kind of getting you ready for the fact that we are also in this same process for English language arts. We write our own curriculum, and the curriculum is based on our understanding of the standards, but we really do need resources to be able to meet the needs of our students, and that's why we're excited about this program, and excited about the process of aligning a program for ELA as well.
I have a couple of questions. What I found interesting, I remember when Common Core changed and, the whole world ended and stopped spinning on its axis. Remember those days? So this is interesting how you said now that this new material has come out after Common Core, because I remember the conversations about how our school, just like every other school, was struggling with that curriculum. So I think it's interesting that now that there's things to that we've all kind of lived through that, like we all lived through Y2K, and that now there's this information to back that up, right?
Well, what's exciting is that, and this is true for both of these programs, we know what's best for students is to teach in a variety of different environments. So we do a combination of whole group instruction to model mathematical practices, small group instruction based on the needs of those students based on assessment data. independent practice, time for kids to work together, to talk about math. And what's exciting about programs that have been published since the Common Core is that it's built for those kinds of learning experiences. Our teachers aren't left with trying to fit the program into what's best for students. What they can do now is they can utilize the materials that are built for those kinds of experiences, which is really powerful. That's why the programs that we're looking at now are so powerful, because they are really aligned to the kind of instruction that we are facilitating in our classrooms.
Okay, and I just have two other questions. One, so can we assume that in this conversation that you've talked to the junior high in terms of like then when they leave the elementary schools with what you're talking about, that there's coordination with the junior high so that when the kids, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I do.
So there's continuity.
Interestingly enough, it's through the conversations with the junior high that really reinforce the need for a more aligned curriculum. So the challenge we have when we're an elementary teacher is we're a content area specialist for 4 contents. So if I'm an elementary teacher, I need to be a content area specialist so that I can prepare my students for the next level for 4 different subjects: English language arts, math, social studies, and science. So there's a couple of things at play here. First of all, we're going to sort of realign the way we're utilizing our content area specialists in 5th grade at Manning, and so that teachers become specialists. That's going to help that sort of alignment where we know we're doing a better job of preparing our kids for that next level and articulate that. The teachers who teach math and just math, they focus on and prepare students to those standards, and they, based on their own professional development and articulation, their curriculum is strong, and they select those materials because that's their focus. The tricky thing when you're an elementary teacher is that you have to focus on all of that and be good at all of that. So that's, I guess to answer your question, is it's almost because of how we want to prepare our kids for their future.
Good.
That
good.
we've done
That
helps.
Thank you. And then the last thing is, so you're looking to pilot this next year?
Oh, you want to take this one?
Sure.
Okay.
So I went in speaking with the rep from Ready Math. It was clear that most school districts that take on this program pilot it first. We had some staff members that were interested in piloting the program, but that was in January, February. It wouldn't have made sense economically or time-wise to be able to pilot a program just for a few months, because you need to pretty much pay for that comprehensive online component. So because cost effectively, it would make more sense for us to do the pilot next year, because we have full access to everything that the program offers, and we're paying a significant amount less. So even if we are ready to go and it's something that we really want to go forward with, we're not getting anything less by going with the pilot. When schools do the pilot, they want teachers to teach the program with fidelity, and that's what we want too. And so all the professional development is kind of built in, and we're still going to be paying for that professional development, whether we adapt that fully, say this is what we want for the next however many years, or if we piloted. So the pilot was simply a means to save financially, but we're getting everything out of it that we would if we were to do a full implementation with the company.
So once we finish the implementation, this is an important thing to understand, is that once we finish the implementation next year, we're going to get a significant discount on the program. And this particular company wants schools to do this because the feedback that you get for the pilot helps reinforce the program. Because this program is, updated constantly, so the teachers provide good feedback for this company, so this publisher. After the pilot, if we feel that this program is successful and it's what we want, then we can move forward with it, and then we'd pay the full price. Now, the pricing model for this particular program is the consumables and the online portion is an annual fee. So kind of gone are the days of the adoption of the textbook series and it lasts for 10 years. Whatever program you go with now, you have to kind of expect that annual fee. And the annual fee per student is within the range of the school's budget.
And and this one more thing. And then, so the question that I had is, when we're going to move towards changing it, if we could share it with the parents first before we have.
So certainly we want the parents
you know
to know that we're changing the program, and that they'd want to know what to expect. One of the things that we really like about this program is the comprehensive online portion of the program, and that would support teaching and learning, the partnership between parents and teachers. There's also parent letters for the units, and certainly we would like to take every opportunity as possible to add it to let parents know that this is going to be a beneficial change for their students.
Just because I remember when lattice math started, and there were some of us that checked out at third grade with helping our kids with their homework, so you know what I mean? So just to help our parents help the kids.
When we were speaking with staff about our final 2 resources and going through some of the pluses and deltas of both programs, one of the many pluses of Ready Math was that teachers felt that their students were being more supported at home by parents, because some of the homework assignments that they were sending home, they all come with somewhat of an example at the beginning of the math homework, which, most parents and people our age, we didn't learn math the same way that our students are learning it. And so that a lot of teachers said that was very helpful for their kids taking it home.
Okay, thank you.
Try to be sensitive to the parents, right?
I just remember the last time it was.
So does the
difficult
package that's here represent everything that they offer for this, or are there pieces that you're not implementing that could be added in later if you needed them, or?
The program, the pricing model, the Common Core, Ready Common Core Mathematics, all of those materials, all of that, what we pay for on an annual basis would be the student materials, the student consumables, just like we had done in the past, and the online component. The teacher's manuals and the teacher's materials would be, if there's any updates, those would be available with that annual cost. The pilot, what they're doing for us is they provide an online diagnostic assessment. That part we aren't paying for this year. So we're kind of giving them, we're paying for the print materials and the access to the online. The access to the online and updated print materials would be what we'd pay for going forward. Does that make sense?
We're still getting the online component this year. It's just at no cost to us since we're doing the pilot first.
Okay.
So we'd have to budget in, going forward, we'd have to budget in an ongoing fee to access the online starting in the following school year.
So sometimes I wonder with a pilot, because a pilot has a purpose, and so you could get into your pilot and decide, ooh, this really isn't what we wanted or expected. How nimble are we to alter the path that we're setting forth here, if we decide, oh, this is not really working the way we thought it was going to work?
Well, that's because the process was done so well. When Britta designed the ability to be able to access all 3 programs, and we narrowed it down to 2. Mm-hmm. If this program we end up thinking it's really not going to meet our needs, we can go with our second choice, which really would have been a really strong choice if we would have chosen it. So we can switch gears if we have to.
Okay.
And our teachers have enough exposure to our second choice program so that if we make that decision, we will be confident that it's the right decision. And I think this is a great opportunity. The other thing that's important to know is the professional development that we get as a part of this package that we have to pay for. It's not professional development directly related to the program. It's professional development that will provide us capacity to teach using best practices, so that professional development opportunity will cross over to other programs as well.
Okay.
That helps.
Any other questions? So when are you going to come back to us when you start?
The next meeting for math will be the next meeting.
Oh, okay.
So this is one of those pieces that we've talked about a number of times with the board is how do you know what you implement and how do you know what's working and so that piece I think is something at the board level that we need to establish. How are we going to evaluate it, when they come back to us, and so that we know this decision was a good decision and that. So I don't know exactly what to put in that algorithm, but I think it's something that we should expect from this implementation, that it comes back with data and the positives and negatives, that you're experiencing in the pilot.
That's something Nadine and I can work on, so that when Nadine comes back at our May meeting, that information will be provided so that the board will know what metrics we'll be looking at to make sure that it's having the impact that we need to.
Okay.
Yeah, we've already started to have discussions, so I'm sure we'll be able to provide you with some solid metrics to measure that.
Great.
Does anyone else? So I just have a question about money. So this total here is, tell us how that breaks down then so this is what we have to do the pilot program, and then what does it look like for each year after that?
Okay, so what you're looking at, the funds for professional development, the last two lines, those are covered through the title funds. So ongoing, we'll have to budget in money for the consumables and the online. It works out to be about $39 per student. And that's within the realm of the budgets for the buildings. So the buildings have, lines for consumables or curriculum materials. So that $39 per student ongoing costs fits into that budget.
So this cost right here is what you would be coming with in the May meeting.
Correct.
Just to get the pilot going, and then after that.
We're going to purchase this out of this year's budget. We knew we were going to, we talked to Kim, and Kim kind of helped us work through this. We want to get the materials in the teachers' hands before they leave for summer, and we want to provide some professional development in May. So that's why we're purchasing making this initial purchase, which includes the teachers' manuals and the assessment guides and those things that the teachers would most likely use to plan. That purchase is being made sort of in advance of when the students will use the program. And that's going to help teachers prepare for the implementation of the program in a more thorough way. The English Language Arts program, because the teacher's guides and all of the kind of the more expensive parts of the program are being purchased out of this school year, we want to see if we can align the purchase of of the ELA resource out of the 18-19 budget and begin that process out of the 18-19 budget, so that when we knowing that we're going to have the initial purchase is more expensive because you're buying those teacher guides. So we're starting the math this year so that the teachers can have that material and we can use the 17-18 budget. Then what we want to do is we want to find an ELA program so we can use the 18-19 budget to get the initial costs in, and then knowing that we're going to have annual costs for both programs going forward. And we need to align those ongoing costs so that they're within the budget for the school's curriculum piece.
Well, obviously, one of the things we do with our students is teach. So is this in the budget already, or are we asking to add this to the
This
budget?
is in the budget already.
Yeah, so what we did, we do that cutoff spending at the end of
Yes.
February. And then Nadine had come to me and said, hey, we're thinking about doing this. So this was something that I knew that the elementaries might be spending some of the money that they had left over for this. So, and they have enough funds left over to accomplish this purchase.
Are the math and English language arts being focused on right now based on obviously current need with test results? And then after this, is our social studies and science is going to be addressed? Are we concerned? Are we showing concern in those testing areas as well?
Right now, we've been aligning our teaching and learning to the NGSS standards, so social studies standards. The first year for social studies standards is kind of technically this year. We're met with a challenge for ELA, science, and social studies to find enough text materials that is aligned to all of those different sets of standards, and that particularly in ELA, there's a balance 50-50 informational text that is within the content of science and social studies, and literature that helps kids understand kind of that part of the world. So the resources that we've been looking at, and the one that we're most interested in, builds the ELA units into science and social studies units so that kids have background knowledge that they've acquired through literacy, reading, writing, and speaking and listening, and kind of those foundational skills. And then when they are engaging in learning experiences for science and social studies, they have that background knowledge that they've acquired during the literacy instruction so that the inquiry can be focused on. So when you're in science instruction, what you're doing is evaluating phenomena and, looking at how to build things, and you're focused on inquiry. So that's one of the criteria for the ELA programs that we're looking at, is to make sure that we can sort of seamlessly address those sets of standards. Because once again, when you're a K-5 teacher, you need to be secure in all of those sets of standards. The tricky part that we have found out that teachers need to find enough text sets and text materials for our kids to engage in learning and reading, not just learning to read, but reading to learn, that address the content of that social studies and those social studies and science standards. So our teachers need to find text sets not just for assessment, but also for that kind of day-to-day instruction. So that's been challenging. So we have to do a lot of looking. So we spend a lot of money on magazine subscriptions and some databases and some online resources that have text sets, but we have to compile them and match them to the themes of those units, and that's challenging. So that's why we're looking for, one of the criteria for the ELA materials is that it does that work for us so that we can focus on teaching and learning and not finding materials. I hope that helps.
I have one last ABC question. So for those parents that have been around for a long time, ELA, could you English
language arts.
English arts. So does that replace
Well,
reading, you know what I mean?
That's the term that we use for all of those literacy skills. So probably what I should have done in this material for you is to kind of define that to be all literacy skills. So that includes reading, writing, foundational skills, phonics, spelling, speaking and listening, anything involving literacy. So the ELA Common Core Standards, that's what ELA stands for. Then for our dual language folks, it's SLA.
Yes.
And that's once again, and I hope I was clear, the materials that we're purchasing, they come also in Spanish, and the Spanish is 100% aligned to the English, so the monolingual and the dual language teachers can work together to share resources because those units are aligned for math. And then one of our criteria for selecting an ELA program is to make sure that the SLA is aligned the same way.
I don't mean to put you on the spot. Sometimes when they're talking, all of a sudden people are like, what are they talking about?
Yeah.
ELA, is this some new thing, new rock band or something, you know, whatever. So thank you for that.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. The next item is the first reading of proposed student handbook revisions.
Good evening, everyone. First, I want to say thank you to Mr. Carey, School Board, for having me here for the first reading of the student handbook revisions for next school year, 2018-2019. My name is Kevin Weck. I'm one of the assistant principals and dean of students at Westmont High School. Just to kind of give a little bit of background knowledge in terms of how the process works, every spring I meet with Mr. Carey to determine when's the best time for us to have the 2 readings at our board meetings. After that, I chat with our building principals. They communicate with their staff with a Google Doc asking for any edits or revisions they'd like to see for the following school year based on their building level handbook. Once that's all been gathered, we then have a committee that gets together, and that committee consists of building administrators, parents, and students who get together to see if there's any additional revisions or edits they'd like to see for the following school year. After that committee meets, I then share that information with our district office, and that's then shared with our school board. And we're here at the first meeting, which is tonight, and then the second meeting is going to happen at the next board meeting. And once that's all approved, we share it with our administrative assistants, and we send that in for copying for the following school year. So hopefully we get all this back mid-July, early August. And that's the process we have then for the handbook revisions. At this time, we're just going to kind of go through each building level in terms of revisions. If there's anything, you know, we can make this as interactive as you like, but I'm just going to kind of highlight maybe 1 or 2 from each building level and then open it up for questions at the end. All right, so we're just going to start with the elementary proposed handbook changes. Any questions on that one? Yeah, it's, after working with our administrators over the last few years, it seems like they've narrowed down in terms of their edits or revisions I'd like to see. Moving on to the junior high, one of the highlights would be the unexcused absence or tardies for non-district sports activities, events, clubs, recreational activities. That's just a formality for reporting to the state in terms of being consistent. Another one which was brought up by one of our student participants was the portable speakers are not allowed on buses. I think that at times we've had students get on the school buses and they decide that they want to play their music as loud as they can, and that was shared with us, so we thought it might be nice to put that into the handbook. As technology increases, we have to try to stay on top of that. And we put that revision in for the high school handbook as well. Anybody have any questions on the junior high?
Just wondering why we're not putting that same provision into the
elementary?
Elementary, yes.
You know what, speaking with Ms. Peterzak and Mr. Wiley, they haven't mentioned that in terms of being a concern, but that wouldn't be a problem in terms of communicating that with them, to see if that would be a possibility for next school year. Yeah.
I'm just, if we're doing it to junior high and senior high, why are we not doing it across the building?
Yeah, let me just put that down. Any other questions or concerns with the junior high? Okay, and then moving on to the high school. Just a couple here. For attendance purposes, we are going to have one that's an automated attendance line where parents can call and leave a message saying their child's going to be sick or absent the following day. If they need to speak with someone, we'd like to have them call this other number, and that way we have somebody there to pick up the phone at that time to find out if it's an emergency or something along those lines. Let's see if there's...
Can I ask a question on that?
Yeah, go ahead.
I was reading somewhere, before we even saw this, about some districts going to parents emailing. Is that ever a?
The problem with email is that a student or child could possibly have their parents' email open up, and they could send an email from their account, and we would not necessarily have that, you know, that personal touch in terms of relationships and finding out whether or not this is the parent or the child who's sending us an email saying that their child's going to be out.
I'm just wondering because of the 24-hour automated line. I mean, I'm sure whoever's listening probably can tell if it's a parent or a student.
To an extent. A lot of times with the attendance, we can pinpoint who might be out because it's a certain day, or, you know, it's a Friday afternoon.
Okay.
And we can kind of do a little investigation on that. But for the most part, we want to give parents the opportunity to call if they're at 7 o'clock and they got to be at work at 6 o'clock the next day.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. All right, and then let's see if there's something else. Yeah, the portable speaker we'll have on the high school as well. And some of the other changes are just grammatical. Know that we do have.
Can you back up?
Yeah, sure.
Just to where the sports physical, you
Sure.
have it highlighted in yellow, only valid for 13 months. So what did we have before that you're adding in?
So the language to the left is actually what we had before.
Right.
I don't believe we had anything in terms of how long, in terms of like, once it's submitted, how long it goes out to.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. All right, and the others are just the media center, some changes in terms of some of the technology we have in the media center and the updates, just some of the policies Ms. Therese would like to see in terms of students using some of the facilities. And let's see if there's anything else here worth mentioning. I think that's about the extent of it. Does anybody have any questions or concerns regarding the high school revisions or edits? No? I'll go ahead and bring that up with our elementary admin team, and we'll make sure that's a part of next year's revisions. And then we'll have the second reading at the next board meeting, okay? Thank you again for your time.
Kevin, I just want to
go ahead.
clarify, the elementary handbook revisions, those are for both elementary schools?
Yep.
Okay, I'm just clarifying, the document is titled Manning, so I just wanted to ask the question.
It's
to
for
make sure
both.
It's for both. Okay.
Yeah, so we have 3 levels in terms of handbooks: elementary, junior high, and high school.
Great, thank you.
Yes. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you again for your time. Everyone have a great evening.
You too, thanks, Kevin.
All right. The next item for discussion, presentation of monthly financial statements.
The March 2018 financial statements are attached for your review. This month we received $169,000 from the state, and $120,000 of that was our general state aid payments. The state has vouchered $352,000 of fiscal year 18 payments, which represents second and third quarter mandated categoricals. I did want to point out that the short-term interest rates have been increasing over the past, 6 months, and so I have been moving funds around to try and capture some of that rate, while again keeping our funds liquid, safe, and secure. In the Ed Fund, our revenues are just slightly higher than the prior year average, and this is because, again, we received FY17 payments into FY18. And we received $169,000 of fiscal year 18 payments in the Ed and Tort Fund, and there's $114,000 of payments vouchered. And in the Transportation Fund, the state has vouchered $238,000, and again, that represents the second and third quarter payments. We did receive second quarter payments, I think it was yesterday, so they are coming. And then as far as our expenditures go, in the Ed and Tort funds, they're comparable to the prior year average. Again, in the O&M fund, they're where they should be at this point in time. We're 61.24% spent to date, and we were 57% spent last year. And then in the Transportation Fund, That fluctuates year to year, and it's a little bit higher than it has been the last couple years, and that's because we have received some of our invoices on a more timely manner and are getting those paid. So that's catching that up. The student activity accounts are attached for your review, as well as the investments. We have $12 million, almost $12.5 million invested in short-term investments. At this point in time, we've earned $145,000 of interest so far this year, which is much better in prior years. And then the fund balance report is also attached, and you can see each month our fund balance is declining because we received all of our tax money and we've been spending that down. And so we will receive some early taxes. A lot of people paid early taxes this year because of the tax law changes on mortgage interest, or on your property taxes. And so we did receive notice that we will be getting an earlier distribution of taxes because of the early payments by taxpayers. So we'll start to see that in May. Does anyone have other questions?
Okay. Then the next discussion is capital project reporting.
Okay. You have quite a very large report of the capital expenditures or projects out there that have been identified by Mike Mayoris. Gary Armstrong and Marie Charlton. Mike Mayoris and I met and reviewed this list and to present to you this evening. And so the expenditure, proposed projects or things that we need to keep on our radar are on here, broken down by school. And then at the back, there is also a summary so that you can see total cost by school, kind of broken down by year, and then also projects by type. So whether it's concrete, parking lot, roofs, lighting, HVAC, mechanical, carpeting, landscaping, those type of things. So you can kind of see what categories all the projects are in as well. And one of the other things we added this year was that we put in the column the year entered. And so we can start keeping track of how long these projects have been on the list. I did not go back to many years. I just really put in this year, started with this year. There's a couple 2017s on here, but as I have some time, I will try and go back and do that. Some of these have been here the entire time that I've been here. And so we need to really start focusing on addressing some of these items. We've done lots of renovations throughout the district in terms of upgrading our buildings, safety and security, but we need to start really focusing on some of the infrastructure of some of our older buildings. So we went through and we've also identified where the funding could come from. So we have 3 categories. We have life safety, capital improvements, and the O&M fund. And so there are a lot of things that we can do out of the O&M fund, and what we've presented here in the highlighted yellow items, those are the items that the committee felt, with the recommendation of Mike, were the priority. So they are highlighted in yellow, and those are things that we would like to do next year. Some of the yellow highlights are things that we're actually still doing this year, that were part of the budget and are still in process. And then we also added a page that has shows you what has been completed so far. So that was new last year. And then kind of what we've completed over the years, because that was one of the things that was missing. It was we always were adding things, but you weren't really seeing what had been accomplished as well. So anyway, as we go through some of the items, we'll start with the high school. There are some flashing repairs that need to be done and some repair work on the roof drains for next year. And then the Vulcan Rain combo oven for food service, that should be replaced as well. We did apply for a grant this year that hopefully would cover that, and we're waiting to see, we still haven't heard back from the state to see if we will be awarded that grant. If we do that, then we'll have funds to cover all, at least part of it, if not all of that, and that would come out of the ed fund. And then the other thing are the student desks at the high school. We're gonna start a replacement program because many of those desks are original to the building and should be replaced. And then the last thing on there is screen and restripe the gymnasium floor. And so we have done, the volleyball lines are difficult to see. Every year we do some maintenance on the floor, but it's been difficult for the officials and the players for the lines. So Mike has recommended that we restripe that as well, and we would have an outside vendor do that.
Just a very minor point, but that's not actually asterisk.
Yeah, I realized that. I
Okay.
missed that, but it is in the yellow, so.
Okay.
All right, so that total, the total of those proposed projects is $115,550 for the high school. And then at the junior high, the highlighted item is the electric strike on the office door. And that's being done right now at the junior high. When you enter.
Okay, I was gonna say, could you explain that?
Yeah, when
Okay,
you
thanks.
enter the junior high, you have to get buzzed in. And then you have to get buzzed in to be allowed into the commons. But right now, once you're buzzed in through the outside doors, you can enter the office without having to be buzzed in. The other schools, you can enter, you have to be allowed into the office as well. So given the security issues and problems that we've been seeing in the news, so frequently, the most frequent one in Florida and stuff, we really felt that it was a priority to make sure all our buildings had that same level of security, and that wasn't addressed in those upgrades that were done in the 2016 projects. So that is in process right now, and that's coming out of the 17-18 budget. And then there's some masonry work. So there's, expansion cracks and things like that. We want to make sure that we maintain the fidelity of the outside of our building. And then in the south hallway, there's some tile that needs to be abated and the new tile installed. And some of that's breaking up because of some issues with the slab. So that's proposed for next year. Mike's in the process of getting some bids and quotes on that. So the recommended work out of next year's budget for the junior high would be $38,000. All right, and then at Manning.
Kim, are these gonna be, are they like summer projects?
Some of them will be summer, and then some might be done throughout the year. Yeah, it just depends on how he gets them scheduled. The next on Manning School, we're looking to replace several sections of the patched boiler pipe. So this is something that we've done some of this already. And then we want to do $10,000 for the 18-19, and then another $10,000 worth of work in 19-20. And then there's a new copper fin tube radiation that needs to be done. So there's leaks in the copper tubing, and so that would be $16,000 for next year. Then there's also the building automation module in the gym and the steam pressure sensors for the boiler. And so the heat control was erratic this winter, so we want to have comfortable spaces for our students. So we're looking at doing that in 18-19. And then for the playground, so the mud on the Linden Street field across from the school, there's a lot of mud. I'm sure parents don't like their kids coming home all muddy. Then that gets tracked into the school and things like that. So Mike's gonna be doing some reseeding and things like that. And then also doing some additional fencing on the playground berm there. And that's some work that is slated, Mike would like to finish up yet this year. And so that's $12,000 yet in the 17-18 budget, and then $34,000 for the 18-19 budget. And then at Miller School, there's some vinyl stair treads at both the back and front stairways that should be replaced. We actually have had an employee trip on those when it's been wet, so we'd like to do something so that there's a better, safer footing for our staff and students. So the estimated cost of those two projects together is the $28,000. And then the current boiler controls are from 2001. So Mike would like to replace the ignition controls for the boiler for next year. So proposed projects at Miller right now are $40,000. And then at South School, there's landscaping that was approved for the 2017 budget that did not get finished in the fall. So Mike will be working on that hopefully yet this spring. If not, those funds will transfer over to 18-19. And then again, doing the new boiler controls as well there for the 2018-19 school year. So $7,000 at that school. And then, again, our parking lots, several need some significant repairs. But one of the things that we're doing is, we do some annual seal coating and things like that. And then this is the 3-year cycle, estimated 3-year cycle cost of $60,000 to crack, fill, seal coat, and stripe throughout the district. We did participate in the SACID bid for these, and we actually received some information back on that bid today, but it doesn't look like they specifically followed some of the requirements that we had for how thick that had to be. So we'll be working with them to make sure we have an accurate price and then bring that to the board in the future, at a future board meeting to approve that, given the cost. And then last school year, the board approved the purchase of the commercial cube van and the John Deere mower. And so we're going to be in the process of getting those out to bid and hopefully getting those finished up for the 17-18 school year for this budget. Nothing proposed for next year. And so let's see. So the total cost of the recommended items is about $295,000. And that's the estimated cost in the O&M fund is $276,000. We've incorporated $260,000 in our financial forecast in the budget for these types of items. And then again, the $18,000 for the range would come out of the ed fund. Obviously, there's a lot more projects on here than we have capacity for in the O&M fund. We have a fund balance right now of about $2.5 million. And we have on here, $8.9 million worth of projects. We also are waiting on our life safety survey. Now, some of these items could be incorporated into the life safety, because again, there's, you know, HVAC and things like that, some of the mechanical items as well. So we're still working on that with Steve Cashman, and so, you know, we'll identify which items and bring that forward to you again to review with the board and go over. So some of those items will be duplicated, and we'll highlight that for you. But one of the next steps that we need to do, again, we've done a lot of building renovations, we've addressed safety and security, but now the district needs to start focusing on these type of projects for the district. So our roofs, you know, mechanical, plumbing, lighting, those types of things are, you know, important to the building atmosphere for students and staff. And so we'll have to look at additional funding mechanisms for those. You know, we do have the ability to issue non-referendum bonds, but we also have to work within the capacity that we have for those. So I'll be meeting with Liz Hennessy in the near future to start discussing some of our options in terms of funding, and then we can have further discussions with the both the finance and the facility committees to start working on how we plan to attack these projects.
Did you want to just bring up, because you had a note here about the TIF money from Manning? Did you want to just talk about that a little bit?
So one of the things, some of the projects at Manning, because Manning School is in the TIF district, the agreement that we reached with the village was that you know, we would receive payments of TIF revenue, and that money could be utilized for renovations at Manning School. So to date, we received $85,000. We keep those funds segregated in a separate account. And so we do have that amount of money that can be available for these types of projects at Manning. And I did reach out to the village too, to make sure that if we went ahead and, you know, did some of the projects at Manning before we received the TIF funding, that we could reimburse ourselves from the TIF funds if we issued bonds or things like that prior to receiving that money. So.
But one of the things, and in addition to that, one of the things we had talked about was, do we spend this $85,000 TIF money now, or wait till there's a big ticket item? And
Right, if you look at over the list of items at Manning, there's some not popular things that cost a lot of money, like changing all the pipes, and there's $1.5 million for something, I don't remember what it is off the top of my head. So are we better off letting that TIF money build so that we can use it for some of these unglorious projects, so to speak? Or do we, you know, invest some of the TIF money now? I was of the opinion to let the money build a while and be able to fund some of these larger projects that are going to need to be done sooner or later. But
that would be my recommendation as well.
And maybe you could follow up with when you have the next finance and facilities, but
yeah,
just in the questions of how much money do we have where to use? Okay.
I guess I have a question about that. So was that a part of the original negotiations around the TIF funding?
Yes.
That those dollars would stay within the TIF district? And Manning is the only school within the district that falls
and that's why
within?
that's why we were able to negotiate that, and then with a specific purpose for those funds.
Okay.
Kim, could you also talk a little, one of the questions I had, and I know we don't have the answers yet, because the final billing hasn't been done, so about any possible remaining money in the non-referendum bonds from last year. So we don't have the final bill.
We don't have that, but yeah, we're still waiting for a couple more bills to come in.
There's a possibility there's a little money there that could be.
But we are going to use that for the furniture.
Okay.
Okay, and so once that's done, then there would be money left over potentially for other things, and that could be used off of this list at the schools that were part of that, so manning the junior high school.
And like, for one of the things that we had talked about was that entrance at the junior high being out of, I mean.
That could.
The thing is, you know, we don't have
Right,
a
because
million.
that is security.
Yeah.
And so that would fall under.
Yeah, just looking at just different places where we might have money. So if there's, so just wanting to share that, we talked about that at our meeting, that if there's any money left from there, we'll.
Yep. Any other questions?
Okay, so the next steps, just so people know what we're doing here. Kim, again, you're gonna.
So we're looking at, you know, just, this would be, you know, consensus, you know, getting a sense and feel that, you know, this is the direction that you want us to head. And obviously, some of these items would come back to the board, based on costs that we would have to go out and bid, and you would approve those bids. But some of the other work that would fall under that threshold, then we would go ahead and, you know, begin to plan for next year and incorporate this into the 18-19 budget.
Okay, any questions?
That's fine.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so the first action item, approval of Title I school-wide waiver. Who's talking on that?
Nadine.
The school-wide waiver document that you have in front of you is describing, so this is just really a formality that ISB requires us to write up a document which would essentially be information about the school for schools in our district that fall between 20% free and reduced and 40% free and reduced. So we have 3 waivers available for you to see for Manning, Westmont Junior High, and for Westmont High School. In 2015, Miller, Westmont Junior High, and Westmont High School were over 40% free and reduced, which created a condition where we could make those schools what they call school-wide Title I, which is different than targeted assistance. So school-wide funding allows for us to have a lot more flexibility in how we use Title I funds. Even though Westmont Junior High and the high school were at one time in 2015 deemed school-wide, we need to approve a waiver for those 2 schools because at this current time they are under 40%. Manning is a little over 20 or a little bit over 20%, and the waiver that I've presented for you for approval is almost like sort of a safety net. If the funds for Title I, if we can do it, we'd like to get Manning into the funds for Title I. This current school year, we couldn't do it because of the level of funding that we have to have from Miller. We didn't have enough resources to fulfill all 4 of our schools. We could only go to fund Miller, Westmont Junior High, and the high school. So the waivers are kind of a formality, and for the 2 schools, we require that those 2 schools be school-wide because they've been able to utilize those Title I funds in a beneficial way, and we're hoping that we can somehow slip Manning in there as well. Do you have any questions? This is kind of a formality with regard to the ESSA laws, so.
So I guess the question I have is the bucket of Title I money that we get as a district, does that remain constant, whether or not all of the schools get approved for funding?
The past several years, it's been about the same. And I've only been coordinating the Title I funds for 3 years, so I don't know what it's been in the past. But because of the level of free and reduced for our schools, at one point in time, I think Miller was the only school that qualified. Mm-hmm. So because our other schools qualify because they're over 35%. In 2015, they were over 40% free and reduced. We need to provide some resources for them using Title I. So school-wide versus targeted assistance is a program that most school districts want their schools to be part of because of the flexibility, and you use the funds to improve the program of the school overall versus using Title I funds for just the students who are at risk of failure. So that's why we're giving you waivers to approve, because what we're doing is we're telling ISBE we want to continue to use the Title I funds for those schools who have been school-wide. We want to continue to use them in that manner. And Manning, who hasn't really qualified for Title I, if it's possible, depending on the funding levels, if it's possible, we like to have that sort of in our back pocket in case that we can use it for Manning. It's a tricky, it's a tricky situation because we don't really know what our funding is going to look like every year. We don't find out until August usually. So we just want to get this in place so that we know what we can do. If that makes any sense.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, then we have two motions. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the Title I school-wide waivers for Manning, Westmont Junior High, and Westmont High Schools as presented.
So moved.
Second?
And roll call, please.
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Armstrong?
Yes.
Mrs. Coyle?
Yes.
Mr. Price?
Yes.
Mr. Rudy?
Yes.
Mr. Strohmeyer?
Yes.
Mrs. Charlton?
Yes.
Thank you.
Then the second motion, the chair will entertain a motion to approve the District 201 Title I plan as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Armstrong?
Yes.
Mrs. Coyle?
Yes.
Mr. Price?
Yes.
Mr. Rudy?
Yes.
Mr. Strohmeyer?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Mrs. Charlton?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Superintendent's report.
Included in my report is last week the junior high had their community talks event, and was the first time that they did this. And basically, this was part of their E-period, so students self-selected to be part of the project. And the students took a look at the village of Westmont and identified causes that they were passionate about, and then in turn did some research and put together probably what you'd be most familiar with is kind of like the TED Talks. And so then they put together their own TED Talks and then invited community members. And so, you know, we had some of our village officials were involved, many of our village officials were involved, some parents were involved. Marie was there. And so then individuals self-selected what piqued their interest as well. And then they initially had one student kind of present to give everybody an idea of what was going to take place that evening. And then you went off into small groups and you had a student presenter who shared the information. And then there was a discussion that took place and you provided feedback back to the student. But it definitely was, for the first time doing an event like this, it really was done very well. It was excellent. And it really was another opportunity for our school district to connect with our community. And so it was very well done. You know, it was great to see.
Yeah, kudos. It was really, really great to see. I mean, I don't know what your experiences were in junior high, but to have the students, again, speak to a group of adults, they did a research project and then speak to adults on that topic. I thought it was tremendous. So, great work, John Jonak and Amy Quattrone and the staff and the students. It was a great evening.
Nice job.
Okay, anything else?
Nope, that's it.
Okay, are there any board reports? I had one thing. Kevin, just following up on our conversations that the board had over the past few months, can we start talking about supporting our student athletes with a richer athletic structure? Based on the input that the board heard from our community and our staff, should the board look more closely at the structure of our athletic departments across our entire school district? One of the things we had heard. So can we take a look at our organizational structure of sports in our district, and possibly with the eye toward enhancing our overall athletic programs?
Definitely.
So,
Definitely.
Yeah, I would think that's a good idea. We should, the community spoke pretty loud about that.
Yep.
Yeah, we can start that process.
kind of thought about that after that, so I just wanted to put it in on board report. So
Sure.
does the board join in on that conversation? Does that
I would
work?
support that
Okay.
fully.
Okay. Okay, that's all I had on that. Okay, any other board reports? Are there any public comments? Okay, future meetings, Manning Kindergarten Open House, April 26th at 1:30 at Manning School. STEM Night, is this Manning STEM Night? It says at Manning School. So Manning STEM Night, April 30th, 6 o'clock at Manning Elementary School. Miller Kindergarten Roundup, May 1st at 1:15 p.m. at Miller School. Then the Multicultural Night, May 4th, 2018 at 5:30 at Westmont Junior High. The Miller Spring Concert, May 8th at 7 at Westmont High School. And then the Manning Spring Concert, May 9th at 7 o'clock at Westmont High School. And then the next school board meeting will be May 15th, and that is also our student staff recognition. So that begins at 6:30, and that will be at Westmont High School. Okay. The chair will entertain a motion to enter closed session for the purpose of discussing personnel issues, student discipline, and the sale or lease of property.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Coyle?
Yes.
Mr. Price?
Yes.
Mr. Rudy?
Yes.
Mr. Strohmeyer?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Armstrong?
Yes.
Mrs. Charlton?
Yes. And no votes?
No vote.
We will not have any votes after closed. Thank you.